Here today. So my name is Austin Scipiora. I'm a research associate here at the Center for Urban Transportation Research. And I also serve as co-coordinator for the Tampa Bay Clean Cities Coalition, which is housed here at Qatar. And it's my pleasure to serve as your moderator for today's webcast. So today's speakers, we have Alex Kolpakov. Alex has been involved in the Tampa Bay Clean Cities Coalition since it was formed back in 2012. He originally served as co-coordinator until 2017 when he assumed the role of coordinator. In addition to his work with Clean Cities, Alex is a senior research associate at Qatar. He has over 15 years of experience in managing a wide variety of transportation-related research projects. I'd also like to welcome John Paul Freitas. JP is the program consultant for the Division of Air Resource Management at the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. JP is managing the development of DEP's Diesel Emissions Mitigation Program, which combines both the Volkswagen settlement and EPA's Diesel Emissions Reduction Act, the DERA grant program. So prior to joining DEP in December of 2017, JP was a policy and budget analyst in the governor's office, focusing on environmental and energy issues. And finally, I'd like to introduce our third speaker, Doug Kettles. Doug is the director and coordinator of the Central Florida Clean Cities Coalition. He has more than 35 years of engineering and infrastructure experience and specializes in transportation planning, infrastructure development, and standards. So Doug works with both government and private fleets, as well as others, to transition to cleaner fuels, technology, and infrastructure. So Alex is going to speak more about this in just a few minutes, but just to give you some context, Clean Cities is a Department of Energy sponsored initiative that works to promote clean fuels and technologies. And we're fortunate in our state to be represented by 4 designated coalitions. We have North Florida, Tampa Bay, Central Florida, and also a coalition in the Southeast. And one of our roles as Clean Cities Coalitions is to really stay on top of everything that's going on with alternative fuels and how that impacts our state. So we're especially pleased to have the Florida Department of Environmental Protection on this webcast today, who's going to take a kind of a deeper dive into the state's recently released Beneficiary Mitigation Plan. So just a quick look at what we'll be discussing today. Alex is going to briefly cover the Clean Cities program and talk about some tools and resources that are available to you all to assist with responding to these RFIs. John Paul is going to be giving an overview of the state mitigation plan. Doug will briefly touch on some of the implications for the alternative fuel corridors, which is a Department of Transportation initiative. And we're going to be sure to leave plenty of time for a Q&A session with our panelists. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Alex.
Thank you, Austin, and good afternoon, everyone. I will give a brief introduction about the Clean Cities program. Some of you may be already familiar with the program, but the Clean Cities is a program with within the U.S. Department of Energy Vehicle Technology Office. And the primary goal of the program is to reduce petroleum use in transportation. The primary benefits of the program include reduction in petroleum consumption, the advancement of domestic fuels, and then promotion of energy and fuel efficiency. The Clean Cities focuses on 4 major activities that you can see on your screen. They're represented by the nodes. Building local and national partnerships, providing information and education. The Clean Cities develops data-driven tools to help consumers save money and fuel costs, on fuel costs, and also help fuels fleets with their different options for cost-effective alternatives to gasoline and diesel fuels. Then another node is providing technical and problem-solving assistance, and also providing competitively awarded financial assistance as well. This framework is enhanced by the local support through the designated Clean Cities coalitions that Austin just mentioned. Now, the program gives opportunities for the coalitions to network between each other, brainstorm ideas, and there's plenty of peer-to-peer learning. So the coalitions meet and communicate with each other regularly. The program gives access to tools, publications, resources, technical response service. A few words about the technical response service. The Clean Cities provides the technical assistance through two levels of technical response. The first level is just a technical response service, or TRS, and the second level is the Tiger team. The technical response service is an inquiry-based service that can provide responses to Clean Cities coalitions and its stakeholders, and the questions can range anywhere from just the basic inquiries to some more complicated, challenging questions to help educate legislators and government officials and so forth. Now, a second level of the service is a Tiger Team. This is meant for more challenging, more difficult issues that could not be resolved by the technical response service. And the Tiger Team consists of industry experts from the national labs that are available for technical solving problems related to vehicle and infrastructure development. Now, if you would like some more information about these types of services that are available to the Clean Cities stakeholders, please reach out to your Clean Cities coordinators. The Clean Cities program provides a variety of different online resources and tools, and these are just a few I wanted to mention. The Alternative Fuel Data Center is maintained by the Clean Cities program, and it's a website-based resource that houses an extensive collection of information, data, tools, and related to different technologies and fuels. One of the tools I wanted to point out is the Alternative Fuel Life Cycle Environmental and Economic Transportation Tool, or AFLEET tool, which is a life cycle cost model that allows to examine the environmental and economic costs and benefits of alternative fuels and advanced vehicles. One other tool that you may already heard about is a heavy-duty vehicle emissions calculator. It's also an AFLEET-based tool that compares NOx and greenhouse gas emissions, as well as funding cost effectiveness of environmental mitigation projects involving heavy-duty vehicles. So these are just a few of the tools that are available to Clean Cities stakeholders and members to be used, and that could be useful for the fleets to evaluate some of their projects. There are nearly 90 coalitions across the United States, and the map shows the coverage area of those coalitions. Even though you can see there are some gaps in coverage, about 82% of the total U.S. population lives inside the Clean Cities coalition boundaries, so it has pretty good coverage. As Austin mentioned, Florida has 4 designated Clean Cities coalitions, and there is probably one coalition in the area where you live. So here are the coordinators of the 4 coalitions. We have North Florida, Tampa Bay, Central Florida, and Southeast Florida. And I would encourage you to reach out to your local coalitions and discuss how they can help you and your organizations and fleets with environmental goals, and use them as the resource, because this is what we're here for. And with that, I'll turn it over to John Paul, who will talk a little bit more about the recently released Beneficiary Mitigation Plan. John Paul?
Thank you. I'm going to go through a quick presentation on the diesel emissions mitigation program, specifically the finalized beneficiary mitigation plan that was recently submitted to the trustees. And then the balance of my presentation will be dedicated to the next steps, which include the RFI and electric school bus project, which is currently open for applications on a first-come, first-served basis, and then the future goals and general timeline for project funding availability. So just a quick overview of the beneficiary mitigation plan and the 5 requirements. of a plan. So there's a public input process for detailing how the beneficiary or the Department of Environmental Protection, in this case, has involved the public through the development of the plan. The second is the overall goal for the use of funds. The third is identifying areas that bear a disproportionate share of the air pollution burden. The fourth is identifying the project categories. There are 10 eligible mitigation actions that the department can take under Appendix D2 of the final trust agreement. So how we identify and what we will be dedicating to those project categories. And then 5 is the overall emissions benefit calculation, how the department is going to look at an emissions benefit calculation to see where we are in terms of how we are meeting the overall goal. So just a quick update on all 5 of those requirements, which are all in the mitigation plan. The public input process, so we had an initial request for information which actually took place prior to October 2nd, 2017, which is the trust effective date. So that's the date in which the 10-year clock for the use of funds starts. That's when the mitigation plan requirements begin. So we actually had a request for information prior to the final trust agreement being executed. The second and third bullet occurred within the same time period as the fourth bullet, the public survey and comment period. So we had we conducted 5 in-person public informational meetings and 2 informational webinars during a 60-day public survey and comment period. And then July 17th of this year, we released the draft mitigation plan, which was available for 30 days for public comment. We considered all of the public comments and made a few minor edits to the finalized mitigation plan. All of the edits to the finalized mitigation plan are located in Appendix E of the plan. So we've made an effort to show where exactly we have made changes from the draft to the final. That's Appendix E of the finalized mitigation plan. And then we're currently in a request for information process for a period of 30 days, which ends on November 7th at 5 p.m. Eastern. We are asking for folks interested in receiving funding for the 3 mitigation actions or project types that we've selected in our mitigation plan to please submit a request for information. This is merely information. It is not an application for funding. Additionally, the information that you provide will not be used to identify project partners for specific funding. So anything that you provide to us won't be used for or against you or the entity when it comes time to doing a formal application process. And then, as always, we have the electronic mailing list subscription service, which is available, if you haven't already, via our webpage, which I will provide at the end of the presentation. You just scroll down to the bottom and subscribe to the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust news and alerts. So the overall goal for the use of funds. The primary goal is to reduce emissions of NOx, particulate matter, and hazardous air pollutants in areas where people live, work, and visit. So to meet that goal, we will have and we'll balance the following factors. And you'll notice here that we've edited or we've made some changes to number 3 in addition to numbering to show an order for the balance factors. So the first is prioritizing projects, and this is verbatim from the draft plan. Prioritizing projects that replace eligible units with electric-powered and/or alternative fueled units. The second is identifying areas in Florida where the largest number of people are impacted by higher levels of emissions from diesel-powered vehicles and equipment, which gets to what we have identified as air quality priority areas. And then finally, number 3 is a factor in which we reworded to show our prioritization of electric and alternative fuels hasn't changed, but we just wanted to make perfectly clear that we're identifying cost-effective mitigation projects factoring in the prioritized fuel types. Areas that bear a disproportionate share of the air pollution burden. So this is what we have defined as air quality priority areas. In the mitigation plan, we list out the counties which fall under or which have jurisdiction within air quality priority areas. 78% of the state's population reside in these air quality priority areas. They also have higher levels of NOx and closer and are closer to the relative NOx and ozone national ambient air quality standards. So in the mitigation plan, we go into detail for all of the factors by which we came to the conclusion to identify the air quality priority areas. Project categories have remained the same from, in addition to the air quality priority areas remaining the same. 70% or about $116 million for school transit and shuttle buses. The maximum allowable under the settlement of 15% for electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and 15% for the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act, or DERA, which is a federal program administered by EPA in which the department can provide a state match, which is what the purpose of the 15% will be. We can provide an overmatch to what EPA provides as long as we fit in within the rules and the strictures provided by the 2019 DERA program guide. That program guide is available on our webpage. If you go to the Diesel Emissions Mitigation Program webpage, you'll see a section for DERA. We have through there a link to a dedicated DERA webpage in which you can download the 2019 DERA program guide. So I say all of that because once we select the DERA option, the 15% that we use to go towards DERA must be used within the program guide dedicated to DERA, not the other 9 project types specified under Appendix D2 of the final trust agreement. And then finally, an overall emissions benefits calculation. So we are going to be using EPA's diesel emissions quantifier tool. We'll also, we're also in talks to use the Argonne Labs A-Fleet tool, and Argonne Labs, as Alex was stating, has a tool that's was really made for the Volkswagen settlement Appendix D2 activities. So we're looking into that as well. This is just an example of a recent DERA project in which we replaced three mid-1990s port drayage trucks with 2019 engine manufacture year diesel fueled units. So you'll see here the three combined old diesel units with new diesel units have the following annual result in tons. So next steps. So on October 8th, we publicly noticed the finalized mitigation plan submitted to the trustee, as well as the three requests for information for buses, charging stations, and DERA. Those three RFI are available on our webpage. I also, just yesterday, posted links on that webpage to hard copies of the RFI. Those hard copies provide all of the questions for the RFI for a potential respondent to consult prior to beginning the public survey or the RFI survey. We received a few emails asking for a list of questions because folks wanted to see all of the questions prior to starting the survey. I think that that was a very worthwhile effort for us to compile the questions and provide it via PDF. So you can download those questions, consult internally before you begin the survey online. I would like to point out that we will be asking everyone, we are asking everyone that will be submitting an RFI to submit the online RFI and to not email us a completed hard copy scanned in for the purposes of compiling all of the results electronically. It gives us availability to put together reports relatively quickly. And that really is the last point on the RFI is we'll be using the information provided to us from the RFA process to develop the three programs. Those programs will be available once we compile the results and are able to develop each of the programs, set the cost shares, or determine how we will set the cost shares, as well as eligibility requirements moving forward. Eligibility requirements also include specific rounds of funding and whether we'll be prioritizing air quality priority areas per round or in general. Those are the types of questions that will be made evident to us through the RFI process. We also have currently on the same timeline with an expiration date of November 7th at 5 p.m. The availability for funding of an initial round of electric school bus projects. And those are for school districts within air quality priority areas. We're setting the amount at $5 million with the understanding that we will have a probably more than $5 million worth of electric school bus projects applied for. We understand that to be the case. However, we'll be using this first round as an opportunity for us to provide best practices moving forward, and we will certainly have future rounds for electric school bus projects, as well as the alternative fuel projects, which we are going to be looking at in terms of the RFI responses. So this is the information slide. The number there is my direct line, my email address, and then the two web pages that we have, the /Volkswagen is the main diesel emissions mitigation program page. And then the /subscribe is the email subscription service that I spoke about before. If you have subscribed, you would have seen on October 8th the email for the submittal of the plan to the trustee and the opening up of the RFI and electric school bus projects. And then you would have also seen yesterday an email letting folks know that there was a hard copy of each of the RFIs for folks to consult prior to starting the survey. With that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Doug and begin the process of compiling some of these questions, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at the end.
Well, thank you, John Paul. My name is Doug Kettles. I'm with the Central Florida Clean Cities Coalition. Before I get started, I want to compliment John Paul and the department for putting together a thoughtful and diligent plan for the state of Florida. All of the coalitions here in Florida have worked with John Paul. They've been very open and receptive. So once again, thanks to John Paul and the crew up at Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Before I get into the Florida proposed fuel corridors, I want to tell you a little bit about what the coordinators do and how they participate in that. As coordinators and coalitions, we report and support the Alternative Fuel Data Center's station locator and database. And if you go to afdc.energy.gov, that's afdc.energy.gov, you'll see a very thorough listing of all of the alternative fuels that are available. It's a nationwide database, and it's got a great tool for filtering and isolating any particular type of alternative fuel that you would be interested in investigating. If you think that you don't have one of your alternative fuel stations on that database, let one of the coordinators know, and we will facilitate getting that listed. One of the other things that we do is we work with the national labs. In our case, the National Renewable Energy Lab, Oak Ridge are the two that we work with closely, and as John Paul mentioned, we also work very closely with Argonne National Labs. So now that we've done some introduction there, I'll talk a little bit more about the corridors. The corridors are part of a congressional mandate that was passed in 2015. The actual name of the act is Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, or the FAST Act. Really what that is the transportation funding bill that was passed by the federal government that FDOT and others receive a significant amount of funding by. You can see that the Secretary of Transportation was required to work with the with the DOTs and with other entities to establish these alternative fuel corridors. You can see what the goals are there. This is an ongoing program. It's reviewed annually, and nominations are submitted annually. And the program is administered by the Florida Highway, not the Florida Highway, the Federal Highway Administration, and in conjunction with the US DOT. And again, the Clean Cities coordinators work very closely with FHWA and the Department of Transportation to pull together those nominations. Last year there was a draft nomination that was put together by a couple of the districts in Florida for the Florida Department of Transportation. You can see the cover page there, and then you can also see the corridors that we're going to be nominated. We did submit that to the central office, and it has not been submitted yet. There is another round for corridor nominations coming up in 2020, and we hope that we'll be able to submit a nomination that effectively will designate all of the interstates in Florida. There's a small section up in the northwest corner of the state, or northeast corner of the state, in Jacksonville, that was nominated in the first round, but the remainder of the corridors in the state have not been nominated. The work that the coordinators do provides database information to analyze those corridors, provide gap information, and determine whether they are corridor ready or corridor pending. Corridor ready is a corridor that has sufficient alternative fuel infrastructure along its path to support alternative fuel vehicles. A pending corridor might be one that has a gap in it someplace and would need an additional piece of infrastructure or a couple of pieces of infrastructure installed to complete that corridor. As I mentioned, the nomination status, we turned it in last year. It was a busy year in Tallahassee. Let's just leave it at that. We expect that we will be able to submit a nomination this year, and I've included a clip there from Governor DeSantis' announcement about electrifying and installing EV infrastructure on the Florida Turnpike and some adjacent corridors. We applaud that. We think that is a great move. The infrastructure, or the electrified transportation population is growing rapidly in Florida, and that is a welcome initiative from the governor. I'm going to step back a minute here and just talk for a minute about EV infrastructure. There are very loose standards on EV infrastructure, and one of the things that we'd really like to draw attention to is the fact that with the 15% of funds that's available for infrastructure, we want to emphasize that we really need to use experienced and qualified installation companies, and also work very closely with the power companies and the power service providers, since they are the source for the energy for these installations. And not only will you get the best installation, you will more than likely save a significant amount of money. And so we would urge you to contact an experienced EV/SC installation coordinator and work with them, and also early on in the process, if not at the very beginning, get with your power service provider and provide them the information and work with them to get the installation done. Almost all of them in the state that I'm aware of have a significant amount of experience installing electric vehicle charging infrastructure, both in the workplace, out on the corridors, and many other locations, condominiums such as that. Finally, we have the Clean Cities, Florida Clean Cities Coalition has a VW settlement webpage. There's the information for how to access that. We try and keep that up to date, and you can find links to virtually anything you would need to investigate or apply for funding through the Florida Department of Environmental Protection's plan. And one other quick thing, we will have a expo in Cocoa, Florida in early December. We're going to have speakers come down and talk about the plan and some of the other considerations that need to go into your choice of vehicles and infrastructure. And then we will also have vehicles on display for you to sort of kick the tires and talk to the vendors. So that's it for me. Thank you for joining us. And Austin, I guess we'll take it back to you.
Yes, thank you, Doug. It's Stephanie. I'm going to take it over for just a quick second before we hand it over for the next Q&A panel portion of our webinar today. I would like to remind everybody of how to ask a question in the Q&A box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. There is a Q&A box. Simply type in your question and or comment, and then we will read those out loud to everyone. I do know that there is a significant number of questions. Austin will try to get to all of your questions, but for some reason, if we are unable to get to your questions, we will download all of the questions from the Q&A box, and we will send them to our panel and our presenters today to get them to respond to those questions, and we'll post them on the Cutter website underneath the recording. So Austin, do you want to get to the Q&A portion?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Stephanie. So real quick before we jump in, I'd like to also welcome Chris Rustman to our panel of experts here today. Chris has served as president of Florida Transportation Systems since 2001. And since then, the company has continued to grow its functions in school and commercial bus sales, part sales, warranty, and service. In 2007, FTS was named as one of Inc. magazine's fastest 500 out of 5,000 growing companies in the U.S., and the company now employs 43 full-time employees in 2 Florida offices. So FTS serves as our Florida State authorized dealer for Bluebird buses, E&C buses, Goshen Coach, World Trans Bus, Collins commercial buses, Braun Mobility products, Primetime specialty vehicles, as well as the Microbird products. And I just want to note too real quick that the FTS team has been extremely supportive of Clean Cities from the beginning, and Chris really has a wealth of knowledge on alternative fuel bus technologies, so we're really glad he could join us here for today's discussion. So with that, we're going to go ahead and open it up to questions. JP, I think we're going to start with you. Could you talk a little bit about the general timeline of funding? Maybe speak first to the timeline of funding for that initial $5 million for the electric school buses, and then maybe touch on the timeline with respect to the RFPs for the school transit and school buses.
Okay, so November 7th is the deadline for applications or the application worksheet, which is available on the webpage. At that point, we will notify the folks that have applied and were first to apply that we will begin the process of developing and executing a grant agreement with those school districts. It will be the responsibility of the school districts to publicly identify and procure the electric school buses from a vendor. So what that means is we'll be doing a cost reimbursement grant agreement, and then the timeline by which the deliverables are to be met will be determined during that grant agreement development process. We understand that when it comes to electric school buses, there's an initial order, and then there's a time for manufacture of those buses before they're delivered to the school district. So all of those timelines will be addressed in the grant agreement. And then as far as funding availability for the 3 project types, we anticipate a little bit of time to compile the RFI responses and then begin developing each of those programs. We do anticipate various rounds of funding as opposed to just one round that's just on a rolling basis. that to be the case due to the nature of needing to prioritize areas while also providing opportunities for areas that are not within an air quality priority area to receive funding as well. And then finally, we do anticipate variation in the application process. So while we are doing a first come, first serve application worksheet right now, you can anticipate other types of funding availability notices in the future where we have other criteria to that we use to award funding to grantees.
Okay, great. And I know you touched on it a little bit, but could you maybe just clarify exactly what you guys mean by first come, first serve? We've had that pop up in a few questions.
First come, first serve is we publish a notice of funding availability, and we provide the application worksheet. We set the limit of funding that we were providing for this initial round, and the first applicants that fit within the criteria that we set forth in the application worksheet are the first ones to be noticed or identified as participants in the program until we reach the cap, which is $5 million for this round. So $5 million, plus or minus, depending on the line that we set is $5 million. But if an applicant comes in and has applied for the minimum number of electric buses or within the minimum or maximum range of electric buses, we'll honor that amount that they applied for if they are the applicant that has reached that $5 million limit for this round. So first come, first serve really means we set the limit and then we accept applications and we'll award or notify entities that they are participating in this round up to the time in which that $5 million limit has been reached.
Great, thank you for clarifying that. Chris, question for you. Given this kind of initial project, the $5 million for the electric school buses, do you anticipate there being any issue with the supply side?
Negative, Austin, and I think the way we can kind of step back and look at this a little bit, the $5 million, the offering and opportunity for the electric school buses, once you get into the application process and submittal process, really we're looking at probably a 10 to 12 bus, maybe 15 bus allotment there. So as far as supply meeting demand, that's not really anticipated to be a challenge whatsoever with this notice of funding availability.
Great, thank you. Chris, again for you, and Doug, feel free to chime in on this one as well. Could you maybe touch on some of the charging infrastructure requirements for the electric school buses?
Definitely, Austin, and that's something that's been a little bit unique to us and very specific to the EV bus opportunities and projects that are out there. This is really a necessary function to be collaborative with your local utility companies, and frankly, that's a little foreign for us as far as approach to market and working with customers. But in a situation where we may be talking one bus to one bus facility servicing a community like that, the initial impact on that singular vehicle may not be that great. However, as we start looking at scalability and again additional vehicles, that load becomes a concern that needs to be accounted for and anticipated. So again, I guess the biggest rule of thumb here is that you're going to need to have conversation with your local utility company just to understand what implications, positive or negative, may be waiting for you out there after deployment.
Great,
Yeah, this
thank
is
you.
Doug. I could add a couple of things to that, and just Chris mentioned, you know, you want to future-proof and be able to scale up on this, and the power service providers can definitely help you with that. You should anticipate that you're going to have to charge multiple buses overnight. There are lots of ways to manage that load. There's some very sophisticated software and systems that will help you manage that load. And then also there are demand charges that when you are in the process of charging these buses, you'll want to be aware of. We would think that most of this charging for school buses would be done in the off hours, but that's another reason for the school boards to work very closely with their power service providers. And my experience has been is most of these school buses and a lot of the transit buses and shuttles are level 2 chargers. They take a combo charger that is commonly available. So you're not really looking at having to put in necessarily a high-powered charging system. But again, talk with the professionals both in the installation of the EVSE and with the power service providers.
Great, thanks, Doug. So JP, we've had a couple of follow-up questions come in regarding this first come, first serve portion. One of our attendees is asking if you could clarify that applicants for the electric vehicle charging infrastructure, so part of that kind of next set of anticipated funding opportunities, just to clarify that that will not be awarded on a first come, first serve basis, that this is applying to this first set of funding.
All right, so we do not know yet. We have not determined how we will make funding available under any other program except for the one that's currently open, the round for electric school bus replacements. Future bus projects, electric vehicle charging infrastructure projects, and DERA projects have not been determined how we will both identify the projects, whether that be through consecutive or simultaneous rounds, and the mechanism by which we fund all of those projects. None of that has been decided yet.
Okay, great. And again, we may not be able to fully answer this on today's webcast, but we've had a question come in about what type of EV infrastructure is eligible for funding, if that applies to the actual hardware or if that also includes software and networking as well. Again, I know we may not be able to get into the second round of funding, but given that charging infrastructure is eligible for this first round of electric school bus funding, if you could just clarify what charging infrastructure is eligible under that pot.
So the short answer is we would like to fund the project for the installation of the unit and associated infrastructure. So what I mean by that is not only the level 2 or level 3 charging station tower and handle, the unit itself, but also the necessary and associated infrastructure needed to make that unit operational. So that includes for projects, for example, for a level 3 or series of level 3 charging stations in one parking lot or for one project. That includes the associated transformer barn that's necessary to install to make those series of level 2 charging stations operational. So you can draw the comparison to a bus or DERA project in that we're going to be funding the replacement of buses with buses. So for when it comes to EV charging infrastructure, we're going to be funding the unit to complete the project. What that means is, and we haven't made these decisions yet, what that means is operational expenses are not going to be part of the cost to install the charging station and the associated infrastructure. So whatever those operational costs, which there are, don't get me wrong, we do acknowledge that those exist. However, those are not going to be included in the funding of a charging station project. Those types of decisions would need to be made between the site host and the business that is going to be providing the operational services.
Great, thank you for clarifying that. Chris, could you talk a little bit about range with these electric school buses?
Certainly. Right now, I fear we're speaking in hypotheticals till we really see some get deployed in Florida and kind of address our heat and cooling concerns down here. What we're looking at right now is probably a typical range of about 100 to 110 miles with air conditioning. Again, one of the things we're going to have to caution and I guess on the opposite end help educate is these vehicles are very subjective to driver interaction, meaning driver's right foot or, well, let's just say right foot, can really impact the overall range of the vehicles on any given route, and that's just going to have to be an education process to kind of ease off the acceleration a little bit and help prolong the charge. And one of the best things is going to be learning how much residual charge we have left after the morning route operations conclude and prior to going out for the afternoon routes. We can kind of really help gauge, okay, what do we need to do in between those two runs to make this a viable product for Florida schools.
Yeah, Austin, I'd like to add something to that too. And from a market perspective, electric vehicles are manufactured and designed to compete with conventionally fueled vehicles. Now, there are certain drawbacks to them, but I think you could look to the deployment of transit buses. I think Miami is purchasing 33 of them. Those are large buses that travel significant distances, and the total cost of ownership for these vehicles is definitely on the plus side. But if you have some fear of school buses or other electric transportation, I think you should look to the fact that these vehicles are being deployed, and it's not one or two or here, I mean, there are thousands of them that are being deployed, so there must be something going well there.
Well, it looks like we have time for about one more question. I'm going to preface this in that we've had a lot of questions come in, so I just want to reiterate what Stephanie said earlier, that we are going to make sure that we address all these questions by sending them out to our panelists, and the responses to these additional questions will be included when the recording of the webinar is released. So JP, can you close us out by maybe just providing a few comments on what additional information you're looking for in these new RFI responses? Many of our folks on the line are part of organizations that had prepared RFIs a couple years ago, so they're just looking for a little clarification on any additional information that you're looking for.
Well, first off, I would preface my answer with two things. The first is the information that we asked for back in 2017 was information based off of what the department was understanding would be part of the final trust agreement when executed. Those RFI requested information from folks primarily to understand the various fleets that were in operation statewide. So much of that data is fleet specific as opposed to unit specific information. So that's the first thing I would say, and then the second is for those that are who are interested or wondering what information we're asking for that's different, we have the hard copies available on our webpage, which detail all of the questions that we ask in the RFI. We're asking primarily for unit-specific information on the units which potential project partners would like to replace. And by that we mean if you have 100 buses, how many of those buses are eligible under the standards or under the requirements of eligibility from the Appendix D2 of the final trust agreement. Based off of those buses that you wish to replace, what fuel type would you like to replace them with? And then we're also going to ask why. And the reason why we're going to ask why is because we want to know folks that if folks aren't ready to invest in electric and or alternative fueled buses, we want to know why that's the case. And if it has to do with relative cost, cost of ownership, the unknown upkeep requirements for those units, then we can do a little bit of work helping folks understand the relative cost of ownership. And there are a lot of resources out there to help folks get to the point where they might be more comfortable taking on this investment in cleaner technology. So understanding the why is also part of the main of the purpose of the RFI. And then additionally, which is rather the primary component of the RFI, is to understand the universe of projects that are currently out there. The RFI in 2017 was kind of a raise your hand and give us some information, whereas this one is raise your hand if you have a project that you want funding for. So these RFI will be used to develop each of the 3 programs and will assist the department in prioritizing or sequencing the types of projects that we fund based off of the information we receive.
Great. Well, thank you. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I do want to give a final thank you to our presenters today and to thank our audience for a great discussion. Steph, I'm going to turn this over to you to close it out.
Thank you so much, Austin, and everybody on the panel today. I did open up the evaluation. If for whatever reason it has not opened up for you, simply click on in the links box click on the evaluation of 10.15.19 and then hit Browse To, and that will open up the evaluation for you. A lot of the links that the presenters mentioned I have also included in the link section as well, so those links are also available for quick reference. Our next Qatar Transportation webcast is scheduled for November 14th, so that is in a few weeks, about a month away, on enhancing cybersecurity in public transportation by two of our researchers here at the University of South Florida, Dr. Sean Barbeau and Dr. Jared Legety. Again, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you on the 14th.